Racist cops drag black man off bus. Regret it instantly when his identity is revealed. The rain had just started to fall as the Route 27 crosstown bus hissed to a stop near 14th and Locust in downtown Milwaukee. Commuters shuffled on board with soaked jackets and tired eyes. At the back of the bus, a man quietly took his seat, setting down two neatly packed grocery bags between his polished shoes. He wore a black windbreaker, a navy button-down shirt underneath, and slacks pressed so clean they looked like they came from a dry cleaner, not a working-class closet. His name was Andre Calloway. To most, he looked like a calm, clean-cut black man, mid-30s, maybe a public school teacher or office worker, someone respectable, someone who kept to himself. His hands were folded on his lap, and a small white receipt peeked from the side pocket of one bag. He wore no headphones, only sat quietly, watching the rain streak down the bus window. But 3 blocks away, inside the local Target he had just visited, a tense conversation was happening behind the customer service counter. He refused to show a receipt, muttered a red-faced floor supervisor named Glenn Murphy. He walked out. Then came back in. Real suspicious. I told him I needed to verify, and he just blew me off. The other manager, Curtis Long, leaned against the counter, arms crossed. You sure he stole something? Glenn hesitated, then nodded too quickly. He didn't act right. Wouldn't even let me look in his bag. I think he's hiding something. Curtis didn't look convinced, but he picked up the store phone anyway. 10 minutes later, a call came through dispatch at Milwaukee PD. Possible shoplifter. Black male, early 30s, black jacket, currently on the eastbound Route 27 bus, refused to show receipt. Caller suspects theft. That was all officers Michael Landers and Travis Kane needed to hear. They were parked nearby in their cruiser when the call came through. Landers grinned as he shifted the car into drive. Let's go fishing, he said. Travis, the younger of the two and still clinging to his academy bravado, tightened his belt and tapped the dash twice. He had only been on the force for 2 years. Eager. Too eager. The bus was stopped by the time they arrived, sirens flashing, lights blaring. Inside the bus, the driver looked back nervously at his passengers. Some stared, some flinched, and one teenager had already pulled out her phone. Folks, the driver announced shakily, looks like the officers need to speak with someone. Please remain seated. Andre looked up from the window, his brow furrowing slightly. The doors hissed open, and the first boot hit the bus floor. Landers stepped on with an energy that filled the space. Kane followed closely, hand resting on his holster like it was muscle memory. The bus grew quiet, breathless. Black jacket, Landers murmured, scanning. Then louder as he locked eyes with Andre. You. Sir, stand up. Andre's eyebrows raised. Excuse me? Stand up and step off the bus, Kane repeated, his tone sharper. Now. Andre looked around. Eyes were on him. Phones were up. I'm sorry, officers, he said calmly, rising slowly. But may I ask what this is about? You match a suspect description, Landers snapped. We need to verify some things. Come on! Andre's voice stayed steady. I haven't done anything wrong. I just bought groceries and boarded a public bus. That's not a crime. Then you won't mind coming off the bus to talk, Kane said. His right hand had moved subtly to his cuffs. Andre sighed and took a step forward. If you'll just look in the bag, you'll see the receipt. I have nothing to hide. Landers didn't move to look. Off. Now. I'm not refusing, Andre said, still calm. I just want to understand. Landers suddenly lunged forward, grabbing Andre's wrist and yanking him sideways. Kane reached for his other arm, twisting it behind his back as the two men forced him into the aisle. The bags tipped over, spilling fresh produce, boxed cereal, and a bottle of dish soap onto the bus floor. The receipt fluttered next to a pair of apples and an unopened bag of rice. "Hey!" someone shouted. "He didn't even resist." Another passenger stood. "I got this on video. Y'all didn't even check." Andre winced as his face hit the metal bar beside the door. He could taste blood in his mouth. "This is how you treat innocent people," he managed through gritted teeth. "Stop resisting," Landers barked. "I'm not resisting," Andre shouted. "Check the damn bag." But no one did. The officers dragged him off the bus and slammed him chest first onto the slick sidewalk, rain now soaking through his shirt. His arms were pinned behind him, cuffs tight enough to cut. "You're making a mistake," he said again. "We'll see about that," Landers muttered. From inside the bus, the teenager with the phone was still recording. "He didn't yell, didn't run, didn't curse," she said, but they treated him like he was already guilty. Minutes later, with Andre bleeding and cuffed in the back seat of the cruiser, the officers pulled up outside the Target store. Landers hauled him out and marched him through the sliding doors, rain dripping from both men's clothes. "Is this the guy?" he asked Glenn Murphy. Glenn blinked, then leaned forward as if trying to confirm. "I mean, yeah, that's him, I think." "You think?" Andre spat. "You called the police and you're not even sure?" Landers shoved him forward. "Let's check the bag," Glenn mumbled, clearly uneasy now. They emptied it onto the counter. A second manager joined, comparing each item to the crumpled receipt that had been found on the bus floor. Matches, every barcode, every timestamp. Every product. Glenn paled. "Looks like he paid for everything." Landers' jaw clenched. Kane looked away. Andre looked directly at Glenn. "You saw a black man come back into your store and decided that meant he was stealing." Glenn stammered. "You refused to show a receipt." "I said I wasn't obligated to. I was trying to get change for the bus, and I told you that." Landers turned to Glenn. "So, we're done here." Glenn nodded meekly. Outside, the rain had stopped, but inside Andre, something else had just started. He stood in the middle of the store, blood running down his cheek, cuffs still digging into his wrists. "You think this is over?" he asked, looking directly at the officers. "I haven't even started." Then he turned, staring at the security cameras overhead. "Everything that just happened," he said quietly, "is now evidence." Landers said nothing. Kane avoided eye contact, and Glenn began to realize he might have made the worst call of his life. Because they hadn't just dragged a man off a bus, they had dragged the wrong one, and soon the world would know exactly who Andre Calloway really was. The ride to the precinct was dead silent, save for the rhythmic wipe of the windshield wipers and the occasional crackle from the police radio. Andre sat cuffed in the back of the cruiser, blood from the gash above his eyebrow drying slowly on his cheek. He leaned back against the seat, but his wrists were too tight, the metal biting into skin that had started to swell. In the front, Landers gripped the wheel with white knuckles. Kane kept glancing back at the rearview mirror, but Andre didn't meet his eyes. He didn't need to. He could feel the heat of their discomfort, the kind that came not from guilt, but fear. Landers muttered something under his breath. "What was that?" Kane asked. Landers didn't respond, just turned the steering wheel hard, making a sudden right onto the precinct's side entrance. They wanted to avoid the main lobby. The cameras. Andre smiled faintly. That told him everything he needed to know. Inside the holding area, a young officer at the front desk looked up, startled at the sight of Andre. "You book him already?" she asked, squinting at the man's appearance. Working on it, Landers snapped. The officer, her name tag reading Lewis, hesitated. What's the charge? Landers paused. Trespassing, interfering. Resisting? Andre raised an eyebrow. Interesting, he said flatly. All that from buying groceries. Kane shifted uncomfortably beside him. Officer Lewis leaned over to her monitor. What's his name? Calloway, Andre, Landers answered. As she typed, her screen blinked, then paused. A different color notification appeared. She clicked again. Hold on, she said. There's a flag on this ID. Landers leaned over. What kind of flag? Federal database match. Secure access level. Clearance redacted. Andre tilted his head. Still sure about those charges, officer? Landers narrowed his eyes. What the hell are you? Andre didn't answer. Officer Lewis stood slowly, picking up the phone. She turned her back and spoke in a low voice. Kane moved closer to Landers. Mike, this is starting to feel off. Landers grunted. He played us. That's all this is. Probably one of those watchdog lawyers or something. Andre gave a dry chuckle. If I were a lawyer, you'd be in court by Friday. Lucky for you, I have different tools. He said it calmly, but something in his voice made Kane step back. Another officer appeared in the hallway, his sleeves rolled up and badge clipped to his belt. Lieutenant Price, tall, salt and pepper hair, eyes like steel. He nodded toward Lewis, who handed him a printed sheet. Gentlemen, Price said, turning to Landers and Kane, you mind explaining why you brought in a man flagged by Homeland Security with bruises on his face and a matching store receipt in his pocket? Landers opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Andre stepped forward slightly, his cuff still on. Maybe I should explain, he said. I walked into Target. Bought groceries, realized I needed change for the bus. Went back in. Didn't show a receipt, got on the bus. And your boys here dragged me off it without cause, bruised me, bled me, humiliated me. Then, after proving I stole nothing, they decided to still bring me here. For what? To bury it? Price didn't move for a long moment. Then he looked at Landers. Uncuff him. Sir, we... Uncuff him. Kane reached for the key, his hands shaking slightly. The click of the cuffs opening sounded louder than it should have. Andre rolled his wrists and winced, the skin raw and red. Price stepped forward, lower voice now. Who are you really, mister? Calloway. Andre met his eyes. Let's just say I've seen too many precincts like this one. Places where instinct replaces protocol and color decides how people get treated. Price frowned. You're with DHS? Andre didn't confirm. He didn't have to. Where's your supervisor? Andre asked. You're looking at him. Then I want a copy of the incident report. The full one, not the one that's about to be rewritten. I want the camera footage from the bus, the target, and this station's holding cells preserved and logged. And I want your internal affairs chief here within the hour. Landers stepped forward. You don't get to make demands. Andre turned slowly. Officer Landers, you assaulted a civilian. You failed to verify a claim. You escalated to violence despite visible cooperation. You ignored exculpatory evidence. You falsely arrested a man with federal clearance. If anyone shouldn't be making demands right now, it's you. Landers' face reddened. Kane took a step back, looking like he'd just realized how far they had fallen. Andre turned back to Lieutenant Price. You may want to call your city attorney, because what happens next isn't internal, it's federal. And it's public. Price nodded stiffly. We'll cooperate fully. You have my word. Andre looked around the room, at the cheap ceiling tiles, the stained carpet, the wall of smiling officer portraits. "This place was built on fear," he said quietly. "Let's see how it holds up under truth." He turned and walked toward the exit. No one stopped him. Outside, the rain had let up, leaving a dull gray over the city. Andre pulled out his phone. He dialed a number. It rang once. "It's me," he said into the receiver. "Initiate contact with the Office of Civil Rights. And pull the files on Landers and Kane. I want their history before morning." A pause on the other end. "No," he added. "I'm not dropping this." He hung up and stood there, staring at the concrete steps below him. This wasn't just about what happened on the bus. It was about every officer who thought they could rewrite reality before the truth caught up. And Andre Calloway was done waiting. By morning, the video had already gone viral. The teenage girl from the bus had posted it to TikTok just hours after getting home, tagging it with simple words, "He had a receipt." Within 12 hours, it had over 1 million views. News anchors scrambled to verify the story. Local reporters swarmed the Target parking lot, and the precinct's phones rang off the hook with calls from media outlets and angry residents. Inside the Milwaukee Police Department, the mood had shifted from defensive to pure panic. In a cramped second-floor conference room, Sergeant Michael Landers sat stiffly beside his union rep, a former cop named Vic Merriman. Landers looked tired, his eyes bloodshot, his jaw clenched. Across the table sat Internal Affairs investigator Rhonda Ellis, flanked by a DOJ observer from Chicago. "We're not charging him," Rhonda said flatly. "Because of who he is," Landers replied, arms folded. "No," she shot back, "because he didn't commit a crime, because you escalated a non-confrontational encounter into a violent arrest, and because the video footage shows a man complying while you ignored every opportunity to de-escalate." Vic jumped in. "Let's not jump to conclusions here. Mike was operating on a credible tip." "The tip was a guess from a retail employee," Rhonda said. "A guess. And the moment Mr. Calloway offered to show his receipt, your client ignored it. Instead, he bloodied his face on a metal bar and dragged him onto wet pavement." Landers slammed his palm on the table. "He refused a lawful order." "No," the DOJ observer interjected calmly. "He questioned an unlawful one. There's a difference." Meanwhile, across town, in a discreet office with frosted glass windows and an encrypted server rack in the corner, Andre Calloway sat in a dark blue hoodie, sipping black coffee. He wasn't smiling. His laptop screen glowed with open case files, body cam footage backups, and a rapidly growing file labeled Milwaukee Police Reform. Across from him sat Special Agent Theo Sanders, a field coordinator for the Department of Homeland Security's Office for Civil Rights. "You sure you want to keep this quiet a bit longer?" Theo asked. "You could go public today and have half the country behind you." Andre leaned back. "If I go public now, they'll turn this into a headline war. I don't need sympathy. I need leverage." "They don't know what I've seen yet. I want them exposed by their own records." Theo nodded. "We pulled disciplinary files on Landers. 5 use-of-force complaints. 2 settled quietly. No suspension. No oversight. His record's clean, on paper." "And Kane?" Andre asked. "Clean slate." "Rookie. No prior incidents." Andre's jaw tightened. "Then he's the crack in the wall." Theo tilted his head. "You thinking flip him?" Andre nodded slowly. "Get me a meeting. Off the books." Just him. That night, Kane sat nervously in the back booth of a low-lit diner on the south side. He had shown up alone, wearing a brewer's cap pulled low and a wrinkled sweatshirt that made him look more like a college student than a cop. Andre walked in, calm and deliberate. He slid into the booth across from him. Kane looked like he hadn't slept. He tried to speak, but Andre raised a hand. "I'm not here to trap you," Andre said. "I'm here to offer you a choice." Kane swallowed hard. "Look, I didn't know." "You didn't want to know," Andre corrected him. "You had a chance to check the bag. You saw the receipt. You heard me speak clearly. But you followed him anyway." Kane looked down. "I'm not gonna lie, I was scared." "Landers doesn't take pushback well." Andre leaned in. "And that's exactly why I need you." "What do you mean?" "I'm going to blow this open. But if it's just me, it looks like revenge. If you come forward with what you saw, what you heard, what you were told to ignore, that changes the narrative." Kane hesitated. "I'll lose everything." "You'll lose more if you stay silent, because when this goes federal, and it will, you'll be listed as complicit." "Not confused, not pressured, complicit." Kane rubbed his face. "And if I talk? You help fix a system before it breaks someone else worse than me." There was a long pause. Then Kane nodded, barely audible. "I'll do it." The next morning, Andre sent a message to his DHS team. "Kane is in. Prepare for internal testimony. Begin whistleblower paperwork." He clicked send. Then he opened a new document. He titled it, "The Blueprint." Because now it wasn't just about justice for himself. It was about making sure no one else would ever have to sit cuffed in a cruiser, bleeding, for the crime of being mistaken. Or worse, for being black. Andre Calloway stood in front of a whiteboard, covered in sticky notes, maps, and printed documents. The room was dim, but the tension inside buzzed like fluorescent lights. Theo Sanders leaned against the table beside him, arms crossed, watching as Andre connected dots with a red marker. "You're building a war room," Theo muttered. "I'm building a timeline," Andre corrected him. "The more precise we are, the harder it is for them to spin their way out." Pinned to the center of the board was a still frame from the viral bus video. Andre on the ground, blood on his cheek, a knee pressing into his spine. Around it, dates and names bloomed outward. Officer Michael Landers, Target Manager Glenn Murphy. The Milwaukee PD Internal Affairs schedule, and now Officer Travis Kane. Andre circled Kane's name and drew a line to a new box. Whistleblower testimony. "He's submitting his statement tomorrow," Theo said. "Wants to do it anonymous at first." Andre shook his head. "We can shield his identity for now, but if this goes to court, he's going to need to stand in the light." Theo exhaled. "You sure you want to go federal now?" "Once you bring in the DOJ officially, this gets slow. Political, no clean wins." Andre tapped the photo at the center of the board. "They already made it political the second they dragged me off that bus. I'm not looking for a clean win. I'm looking for a permanent change." Across town, inside a sleek conference room at City Hall, Police Chief Denise Wallace was fielding questions she didn't want to answer. The mayor sat beside her, trying to stay neutral. Reporters pushed forward with microphones, phones raised, eyes wide. "Chief Wallace, do you have a response to the viral video and the allegations of misconduct?" "We are cooperating fully with the investigation," she said. "At this time, I cannot comment on an active inquiry." "But isn't it true that the man in the video is a federal officer?" another reporter asked. "And that your department is facing federal scrutiny?" The mayor interrupted. "Let's allow the internal process to run its course." Chief Wallace tightened her jaw. She hadn't slept. She'd inherited a department built on silence and fear, and now it was cracking under a national spotlight. Back in Andre's temporary command post, his phone buzzed. It was an encrypted message from a contact at the Department of Justice. "Pulling prior complaints against Landers. Sealed reports found." "We'll send scans." Andre opened the attachment and frowned. 4 complaints in the last 6 years, all use of force. All against Black or Latino men. 2 of them had settled out of court. The others had disappeared into insufficient evidence files. He turned to Theo. They buried them, sealed them under confidentiality clauses. Theo's eyes narrowed. You're gonna leak them? Not yet, but I'll use them when it counts. That night, Andre walked through the streets of his old neighborhood, hoodie pulled low, unnoticed. He passed a bus stop where a young black teen waited alone under a flickering streetlight. A cruiser rolled by slowly. The teen flinched. Andre didn't miss it. He stopped, offered a nod. You good? He asked. The kid nodded but didn't speak. His eyes flicked back toward the cruiser. Andre reached into his coat and handed him a small card. If anyone gives you trouble, you call that number. No questions, just help. The teen took it, eyes wide. Andre walked away. At home, Andre sat alone in his kitchen, the light above humming softly. He stared at his reflection in the glass of his window, jaw set. His phone buzzed again, this time from Travis Kane. One line. I got something. Meet me in person. They met at an abandoned lot on the edge of the city. Kane looked spooked, like he was looking over his shoulder every few seconds. What is it? Andre asked. Kane pulled out his phone and played an audio file. It was a recording. Landers in the locker room the day after the bus incident. I don't give a damn who he is. You treat them all the same. They get mouthy. You shut them down. That's how you control the situation. Andre's expression didn't change, but his voice dropped. Did you record this? Kane nodded. I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing him talk about you like you were nothing. Andre stared out at the skyline. Make a copy. One clean, one encrypted. We hold it until the hearing. Kane looked at him. You really think this'll change anything? No, Andre said. But it'll start something. He looked up at the blinking red light of a nearby surveillance camera. They've been watching people like us for decades. It's time we started watching back. Behind him, the city breathed. Tense, ready. Andre Calloway had been patient long enough. The walls were coming down, and he was going to make sure the first bricks to fall had names on them. By sunrise, Milwaukee was a city holding its breath. News of the federal inquiry had spread beyond local headlines. CNN ran the bus video on repeat. The Washington Post published a feature titled, He Had a Receipt and Still Got Slammed to the Ground. Cable pundits debated police overreach, systemic racism, and the boldness of Andre Calloway's silence. Because Andre still hadn't made a public statement. Not yet. And that silence had power. Inside a small cafe on the east side, Andre sat in a booth with Theo Sanders and Assistant U.S. Attorney Rachel Kim. A laptop was open between them, displaying the locker room recording from Officer Kane. Theo had just played it for the 3rd time. Rachel shook her head, lips tight. That's not just damning. That's training. He wasn't ranting. He was teaching. Andre leaned back, arms crossed. Exactly, which means Landers isn't the whole problem. He's a symptom. Theo added, and Kane's testimony backs it. He said rookies were encouraged to keep the lid on people, especially ones who might get loud. We know what that really means. Rachel nodded slowly. Okay, we're moving forward. I'll submit the complaint to the DOJ's Civil Rights Division and request formal subpoenas for internal documents, officer records, and training logs. What about Target? Andre asked. They've gone quiet. I think they're waiting to see which way the wind blows. Andre gave a half smile. Then let's change the weather. That same morning, a new video surfaced. It wasn't from the bus. It was hospital surveillance footage. Security cam stills leaked to a journalist at the Milwaukee Gazette. The images showed Andre inside the ER, face bruised, shirt soaked in blood. Two sheriff's deputies, Joel Marston and Rivas, stood inches from him, one pointing, the other gripping his baton. The article read, "Sources confirm Calloway was denied treatment for 30 minutes after requesting medical care and may have been physically threatened in the hallway." It exploded online. And with it came more whistleblowers. A nurse, anonymously quoted, confirmed that officers had blocked access to care. A former city attorney admitted prior complaints about Landers had been sealed for political convenience. A community activist uploaded a spreadsheet tracking 15 previous complaints of excessive force by Milwaukee PD, 12 of them dismissed without investigation. The dam had cracked wide open. Meanwhile, in the police union headquarters, Vic Merriman slammed a stack of papers on the table. "They're building a federal case," he barked. "Your locker room speech, Mike? That's not just misconduct. That's culture. You gave them the blueprint for their argument." Landers scoffed, but even he looked rattled. "You think this kid's got the balls to bring us down? He'll fold when the pressure hits." "Maybe," Vic said. "But if Kane testifies and Calloway confirms federal clearance, you're done, and not just fired, indicted." Landers stood, eyes wild. "This is political theater. He's a Fed, fine, but he doesn't look like one. He doesn't talk like one. That's why this blew up. People think he's just another nobody." Vic didn't respond. He didn't need to. That sentence had said more than Landers intended. Back at the cafe, Theo opened his phone and turned it toward Andre. "You need to see this." It was a live stream. The mayor had just been ambushed by reporters outside City Hall. "Is it true the man dragged off the bus is a federal civil rights officer?" one journalist shouted. The mayor paused, then nodded. "We have been informed that Mr. Calloway holds a senior role within Homeland Security's Office for Civil Rights. At this time, we are cooperating fully with federal investigators." Another reporter asked, "Will you issue a public apology?" "I think that's a conversation better had once the investigation concludes." Theo laughed bitterly. "They're sweating." Andre didn't smile. He was watching the mayor closely. "They're adjusting. That's what systems do." "They bend just enough to survive." Rachel leaned in. "We release the audio next week. That gives DOJ time to prepare the subpoenas. But we need to think ahead. How do you want to speak to the public?" Andre looked out the window. Rain had started again, soft, unassuming. He spoke without turning back. "I want them to hear it from me, not because I want their sympathy, because I want their memory. I want people to remember how fast they believed I was guilty, how easy it was to bruise a man and bury the truth." He turned back. "We'll do a statement. But not from a podium. I want it filmed. Quiet. Real. From the street corner where they cuffed me." Rachel nodded. "You got it." That night, Andre walked the block near the bus stop again. This time, he wasn't alone. A camera crew followed discreetly behind. Theo handled the setup. Rachel stood off screen. Andre faced the camera, wind brushing against his coat. "My name is Andre Calloway," he said. "A week ago, I was dragged off a bus for buying groceries, not because I broke the law, but because someone made a call and said I looked suspicious." He paused. "They didn't ask. They didn't check. They acted. And they hurt me." He held up a photo, his own mugshot, bruised and bloodied. "This is what that looks like." Another beat. "But I'm not the only one. I just happened to have a badge in my pocket. Others didn't. And their stories never made it past the sidewalk." He looked straight into the lens. "This isn't about me. It's about a system that protects power and punishes presence. and I won't let it keep doing that. The video went live an hour later. By midnight, it had over 5 million views. Andre didn't watch the numbers climb. He was too busy reviewing the next set of documents. The ones that would make sure nobody could ever say they didn't know. Not anymore. The video hit harder than anyone expected. By mid-morning, it wasn't just trending. It was dominating headlines. Civil rights groups reposted it. Major networks quoted it. Influencers reacted to it, some through tears, others through rage. Within 24 hours, Andre Calloway had gone from unknown victim to the symbol of a movement. But Andre hadn't filmed it for virality. He had filmed it for proof. Proof that the narrative didn't belong to the department, not to the media, not even to the court. It belonged to him. In a conference room in downtown Milwaukee, 3 city council members huddled around a laptop. Their faces were pale, voices low. "He laid it all out," Councilwoman Herrera whispered, "in 3 minutes. And made everyone watching feel like it happened to them." Councilman Parks rubbed his temples. "We can't contain this anymore. The protests tonight are going to double. Triple. He just pulled the lid off the pressure cooker." "Did the chief respond?" someone asked. "She's calling for a public town hall. Says she wants to listen and rebuild trust." Herrera scoffed. "Too late. People don't want listening. They want justice." Back at Andre's command post, Theo was fielding back-to-back calls from civil rights attorneys, network producers, and 2 different senators. Rachel Kim walked in carrying a printout. "We got the subpoenas signed," she said. "Training manuals, use of force logs, internal communications. Landers is already lawyered up." Andre sat at the table, focused, unreadable. "What about the target employee?" he asked. "Glenn Murphy," Rachel replied, "still employed, but we just received something interesting." She dropped a photo on the table. It showed Glenn talking to a man in plain clothes. The timestamp matched the day of the incident. "That's Thomas Welker," she said. "Private security consultant, former MPD, hired by Target's Midwest Regional Office to handle loss prevention strategy. He was on site that day." Theo raised a brow. So Target didn't just have a manager overreacting. They had a former cop working security who likely fed the description to dispatch. Andre's jaw clenched. They subcontracted profiling. Rachel nodded and buried it behind third-party liability. Andre leaned back. "That changes everything." Outside, a crowd had begun to form on the courthouse steps. Signs read, "Justice for Calloway," and "Receipt or not, we belong." Local leaders gave speeches. Kids held handmade posters. A saxophone player on the corner played a haunting version of "A Change Is Gonna Come." Inside, Travis Kane sat across from an ethics review board, nervously wringing his hands. "I didn't know who he was," Kane said. I thought I was doing my job. But when Landers started yelling, I froze. I knew something was off. But I didn't stop it. And I should have." One of the board members leaned forward. "You said in your written statement that Officer Landers made similar comments in previous arrests. Did you report those?" "No," Kane admitted. "I was new. He said it was how things worked here." "And now?" Kane looked them in the eyes. "Now I know that silence is complicity, and I'm not going to be silent anymore." Back in City Hall, Police Chief Denise Wallace held a press conference. "I want to begin by acknowledging what Mr. Calloway experienced should never happen to anyone. Our department is not above accountability. We have initiated a top-down review, suspended both officers involved, and are cooperating with federal authorities." A reporter shouted, "Do you believe your department is systemically racist?" Wallace paused. I believe our system has allowed bias to go unchecked, and that ends now. Watching from his apartment, Andre didn't react. He knew the performance. He'd seen it a dozen times in a dozen cities. The words were clean. The tone was careful. But none of it was real until the system hurt for what it had done. Later that night, Andre stood in front of a group of law students at Marquette University. No cameras. No fanfare. Just a room full of future lawyers trying to make sense of the world. I didn't speak up to be brave, Andre told them. I spoke up because I didn't want to be broken. A student raised her hand. How did you stay calm when they dragged you off the bus? Andre paused. I didn't, he said. Not inside, but panic doesn't protect you. Dignity does. And they can bruise your skin, but they can't touch that unless you let them. The room was silent. Then a voice from the back called out, What now? Andre looked at the students, the future in their faces. Now we fight smarter. We expose the playbook, we hold them to their own rules, and we never, ever forget who gets hurt when we don't. Afterward, he stood alone outside the lecture hall, staring out at the city lights. His phone buzzed. A new message, anonymous tip. Subject line. Landers, something you need to see. Andre opened the attachment. It was a scanned copy of an internal email, dated 2 years prior. A complaint from another black man who had accused Landers of excessive force, only for it to be reclassified and dismissed. Attached was a line from Landers himself. He was loud, aggressive, non-compliant. We followed standard containment procedures. Andre's eyes locked on the timestamp. 2 weeks before that incident, the same man had filed a code violation against an officer for illegal surveillance. They weren't just reactive, they were retaliatory. Andre stared at the screen, and in that moment the twist became clear. This wasn't just about bias, it was about targeting. And he wasn't just a symbol anymore, he was a threat, and he was about to act like one. The courtroom was packed before the hearing even began. Press badges hung from necks like dog tags. Students sat shoulder to shoulder in the back pews. The air inside the Milwaukee Federal Courthouse buzzed with anticipation. This wasn't just another civil rights case. It was a reckoning, and everyone knew it. Andre Calloway sat beside Rachel Kim at the plaintiff's table, hands folded, expression unreadable. He wore a dark gray suit, sharp but unassuming. He didn't need flash. His presence was the power. Across the aisle sat representatives from the Milwaukee Police Department, the city attorney, and 2 defense lawyers representing Target and its private contractor, Thomas Welker. Landers wasn't in the room yet. But he would be. The judge entered, stern, experienced, no nonsense. A black woman in her early 60s with a gaze sharp enough to cut marble. Call this hearing to order, she said. Rachel stood. Your Honor, the plaintiff is prepared to submit new evidence not previously disclosed, involving patterns of coordinated misconduct, retaliation, and willful negligence involving both city officers and a third-party contractor working on behalf of Target Corporation. There were murmurs. The defense attorneys immediately stood in protest. This wasn't in pre-trial discovery, one of them snapped. It's a violation of... The judge cut in. Sit down. If this evidence is material and credible, I want to see it. Rachel handed over a thick file and an encrypted USB. These are internal emails, sealed complaints, and testimony from current and former officers corroborating a pattern of selective enforcement against minority individuals. Most damning, Your Honor, are statements from Officer Travis Kane and an anonymous Target employee who confirmed that Mr. Calloway's incident was not an anomaly, it was protocol. The judge raised an eyebrow. You have the whistleblowers ready to testify? Rachel nodded. Yes, Your Honor. One is here. The other will be appearing via secure video from an undisclosed location. The courtroom went dead quiet. Then the door opened. Landers walked in, flanked by two men in suits, his new legal team. He looked smaller than before, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. For the first time since the bus incident, Andre turned and made eye contact. Landers looked away. Kane was already on the stand. His voice was steady, but you could hear the weight in it. Officer Landers was respected. He had a reputation for getting results, but over time you realized the results weren't always clean. He encouraged using aggression to keep control. That meant stopping people who looked like they'd challenge you. People who looked like Mr. Calloway. The city's attorney objected. Speculation, the judge overruled. Let him speak, Kane continued. He told us to write the report the way we needed to. If they bled, say they resisted. If they shouted, say they threatened. If they stayed silent, say they were uncooperative. There was always a line to fall back on. Rachel stood. Did you ever question him? I did once, Kane said. He said, you can be the kind of cop who changes things, or the kind who survives. I chose wrong, until now. There was a pause. Then the judge asked, and you believe what happened to Mr. Calloway was not about shoplifting? Kane nodded. It was about sending a message. A black man who refused to be small in a place they didn't think he belonged. When Kane stepped down, there was no applause, just heavy silence. Then the judge motioned toward the screen. The second whistleblower appeared, a woman in shadow, her voice digitally filtered. I worked in loss prevention, she said. I saw the lists. Targeted zip codes, profiles to flag, high-risk shoppers we were told to monitor closely. And if someone challenged it, we had Officer Welker on speed dial. The defense team paled. You're saying Target knowingly profiled based on race and background? The judge asked. Yes, and when I raised concerns, I was demoted, then transferred. Eventually, I left. The judge looked at the city attorney. Your response? He shifted. We deny institutional wrongdoing. But we acknowledge this incident has revealed unacceptable practices and intend to cooperate with any federal oversight deemed appropriate. Andre finally stood. Your Honor, he said. With respect, they didn't just make a mistake. They built a structure to support that mistake, then reinforced it with silence, policy, and fear. He stepped forward, voice low but unwavering. I don't want revenge. I want prevention. I want the system to be rebuilt so no one, no matter their name, their skin, their job, gets dragged off a bus and bloodied because someone else decided they looked like trouble. The judge looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Court will recess for review of the new materials. We will reconvene in 48 hours to deliver rulings on admissibility and next steps. Gavel down. Outside, the steps were lined with reporters. Andre emerged into a storm of cameras and mics. Mr. Calloway, what do you want to see happen next? One shouted. He didn't hesitate. I want them to learn that dignity is not optional, that respect is not earned by compliance. It's owed by principle. Then he walked away, not toward a car, but into the crowd. And for the first time, the crowd moved with him, not to protect him, but to follow. 2 weeks later, the verdict came in. The courtroom was silent, tense with the kind of quiet that feels louder than shouting. Judge Elaine Morrison took her time flipping through the final stack of documents, her gavel resting beside her like a loaded weapon. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but the entire nation was watching from outside. Screens in living rooms, phones in classrooms, TVs in break rooms. All eyes on Milwaukee. Andre Calloway sat calmly in his seat, not moving, not blinking. Beside him, Rachel Kim clasped her hands, while Theo leaned forward, elbows on his knees. The defense attorneys stared straight ahead, already anticipating the fallout. Judge Morrison cleared her throat. After reviewing the submitted evidence, including sworn testimonies, sealed internal records, and third-party documentation, this court finds that the actions taken by Officer Michael Landers, the Milwaukee Police Department, and private contractor Thomas Welker constituted a pattern of unlawful detainment, racial profiling, and civil rights violations. Gasps rippled across the courtroom. The court recommends immediate federal oversight of MPD's stop-and-search procedures, mandatory retraining across all precincts, and disciplinary action against all named parties. Further, a financial settlement is to be awarded to Mr. Calloway for damages, with the total exceeding $2.7 million. Landers stood up too fast. "This is insane," he muttered. Judge Morrison didn't even look at him. "Sit down, Officer Landers. You're lucky this is a civil trial." Landers froze, then sat. But the biggest blow was still coming. Judge Morrison turned to the city's legal team. "It is also the ruling of this court that Target Corporation be held partially liable for contracting a security consultant with a documented history of misconduct and allowing him to operate with unchecked authority. A full investigation will be opened into their internal surveillance and profiling policies across all regional locations." Outside, the press exploded. Flashbulbs. Shouted questions. Protesters erupting in applause. For the first time in weeks, the city felt like it was breathing again. Andre stepped out onto the courthouse steps, flanked by Rachel and Theo. He didn't head straight for the cameras. He stopped first at the edge of the crowd, where a group of high school students stood, holding hand-painted signs. "We belong on the bus." "I am Andre. Receipt or not, we matter." One of the kids stepped forward. "Thank you," he said, voice trembling. "You made them see us." Andre bent slightly so they were eye to eye. "No," he said gently. "We made them." Then he turned toward the crowd. The press swarmed in, microphones stretching toward him. "What happens now, Mr. Calloway?" He looked past the cameras to the sea of people watching. People who had followed every step, every bruise, every headline. And he spoke not just to the lens, but to the silence that had let it happen for far too long. "What happens now," he said, "is that the truth stays louder than the excuses." He held up a photo, the same one from the bus video. His face on the ground, eyes open, blood on his cheek. "This image started a fire, not because I'm special, but because I wasn't supposed to matter, because someone decided that a black man on a bus with groceries was dangerous, and when they found out I wasn't what they thought, they didn't apologize. They tried to bury it," he paused, "but we dug it back up." Applause broke out, not from the press, but from the people. Honest, raw, defiant. "This isn't over," Andre continued, "because the system isn't fixed. Because for every story like mine, there are hundreds that never get heard. This isn't the ending, it's the standard, and I hope every department, every manager, every person in power who's been hiding behind silence heard that ruling today. Because we're not asking anymore." He stepped back, letting the crowd's voice rise. Hours later, the video of his speech was everywhere. Hashtags trended again. Comment sections filled with people demanding accountability in their own cities. Teachers showed the video in classrooms. Community centers printed his words on flyers. But Andre didn't stay in the spotlight. He returned to his office, where he pulled a dusty file labeled Detroit Incident from his archives. Another case. Another city. Another man who wasn't as lucky, because he wasn't done. Not until the bus, the badge, and the bruises stopped meaning guilt. That night, he stood in front of the same bus stop where it all began. The street was quiet. A new driver waved at him as he passed. No police, no sirens. Just silence. Andre sat on the bench, closed his eyes, and exhaled. For now, justice had a name. And the world had listened. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something, if it made you think, we need your voice too. Like, comment, subscribe, and most of all, share. Because stories like Andre Calloway's should never be the exception, they should be the turning point.